managed to work out to find that big red button that says live.
Right. Hello and welcome to a gaming conversation with friends. I am Stubbs. It's caused a bit of kerfuffle because I'm calling myself Stubbs now and not stubzgaming. The channel is now called Stubbs. Everything's called Stubbs now because everyone calls me Stubbs. And then if I want to talk about something that isn't gaming, I'm no longer restricted. So not that I was anyway. But yeah, the bloody video's gone. Hang on a minute. There we go. Right.
I was about to say it's a little bit fuzzy.
I didn't loop it. That's what the problem is. In the properties, I did not loop it. There we go. I'll press loop again. Right. But yeah, we're back again with the Renegade Master.
It's all sorted. Mm-hmm.
And this week we have a C-Unit from lordsofgaming.net. It's been quite a while since he's been... Well, he's never been on this actual podcast. He came back when he's to Midweek Gaming. How are you doing, C-Unit?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me on again.
No, it's good. It's good to have you on. Do you want to tell people who you are and who you write for? Because some people may not have heard of you before.
Sure. My name's Chris. Some people call me Lord Chris, C-Unit. I'm a senior writer for lordsofgaming.net. We cover everything from tech, media, gaming, pop culture, you name it. We probably covered it in some form or fashion. I like to cover vast majority of stuff. And my specialty, as Stubbs can tell you, is I like to do a lot of community content, include lots of different creators. Recently in December, I had Stubbs participate in an article. We had like Jason Ronald, the Wizard of Xbox as they call him, and even the English voice actor for Kiryu Kazuma from the Yakuza franchise, Yang Yao.
Well done with that one, getting him on.
Thank you. But it was kind of a last minute thing. I wanted some special people. And I didn't know if he was going to do it, and ultimately he did. So we're glad to have him.
Nice one. But with the game I picked, no one was surprised it was Gears of War. The game.
What do you mean? Of course we're surprised. You've touted 24/7 it's Edith Finch.
A lot of people thought it was going to be Edith Finch, you see. No, Gears of War forever. I had to ask him, like, is it the franchise or the number? And he said, no, it's got to be a number. So I had to pick a number.
See, personally, if me knowing you so well, I would have put either Edith Finch or Gears Tactic.
Oh, no.
It's just...
Not Gears Tactics. But no, yeah, thanks for coming on, Chris. It's good to have you back on. It is. And Removal Sanity. Thanks for coming back on the airwaves.
Much appreciated for having me on again. Yes, it's lovely to see you all. Well, hear you all, I should say. We don't do visuals here. We do voice work.
Good
but it's also good to have C-Unit on. We obviously do know about the Lord's Gaming. And we do watch it regularly. We do keep our eyes open and ears open, sort of thing. So it's good to have him on board. And we apologise in advance for boring him for the next 6 hours.
I'm VJ. Thanks for coming back on.
Yep, thanks for inviting me on. Foolish or perversely, if you prefer, I've decided to join you today.
Oh, thank you. Well, there's some games here you two may enjoy that C-Unit's looking forward to. I don't know if you've got your YouTube open, but I'm sure C-Unit can explain more about this game he's looking forward to. I would just say 100 Heroes, and he'll probably say the full name properly. 100 Heroes is what I'm going to say.
You've gone for the easy translation, haven't you? Go on.
I don't know how to say it. How do you say it, C-Unit?
It is called Eiyuden Chronicle, 100 Heroes.
There you go. You're looking forward to this.
And this has been on your list, has it been seen? You've been watching carefully for this one, is it? Is that your
Oh yeah, back in 2020, they started a Kickstarter for it, and if anybody knows the developers for this game, Yoshitaka Murayama and Junko Kiwano were the former developers for my favorite video game franchise, also Suikoden. 100 Heroes is supposed to be the so-called spiritual successor for the Suikoden franchise, so there's a lot of similarities between the games. It's the old school turn-based JRPG. There's voice actors, there's cutscenes, 110 different recruitable, unique heroes.
Wow.
Everybody's got their own backstory, so that's a pretty big thing.
Is that Gensu Suikoden, published by Konami?
Yes, unfortunately, it is published by Konami. Yes.
Yeah.
So, are you trying to hint at that maybe you've backed this on Kickstarter then?
Yes, actually. Obviously, when you go to Kickstarter, there's different tiers of like
That's right. Yep.
monetary backing you could do. I was in the process of gathering the funds because there was a tier that was like I don't know, it was over $4,000, but you actually got an NPC in the game, and
Oof.
I was trying to do that, but by the time I had figured out that I could, the 2 or 3 spots were already filled. But yeah, it's probably the best game I've ever backed. I trust these developers. I know a lot of people are kind of scared when it comes to backing games through Kickstarter, but we've had consistent updates monthly. Like I said, I'm confident in these developers. They've made my favorite games. A lot of them come from other popular JRPG franchises, like Wild Arms and stuff like that. So it is something that every JRPG fan will enjoy. And if you're an Xbox fan, it'll be available in Game Pass day one.
Really?
That's very good news. That's pretty very. Now I must admit, I'm a Kickstarter. I'm a Kickstarter fan myself, so I've done numerous backings, and to be honest with you, there is a little bit of what I would say, as you said, a little bit of a fear when it comes to backing games. But to be honest with you, probably with the 30 or 40 I've backed, I think I've only ever had one problem where it failed to go through, and that's out of the 30 or 40 I've already backed previously, sort of thing. So if you are wanting to get into the Kickstarter or want to try and help the developers out at the very root core, Kickstarter is a great way to help them out. And 9 times out of 10, you normally get the game a hell of a lot cheaper than it is when it actually comes out out on console or out on PC at its retail price. So it does help out both people, to be honest with you. That's just my take on it.
I've never done a Kickstarter before, so I wouldn't know. I understand why people hesitate, because obviously if you put a load of money in a game and it don't come out, then you've lost your money. But I understand.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think. I mean, there's been very rarely. Most of the games that at least I've participated in, especially when it comes to a lot of the indie games, they're normally about £10 to £15, which is about $20.
That's not bad anyway.
So it's not excessive amounts of money. Don't get me wrong. As Chris said, there are tiers, and you can go up the tiers, and you can get physical copies in some cases, or physical, add-ons. There is different little aspects to it, but overall, I think put in what you're willing to lose. But to be honest, as I said, out of the 30 I've put in, I think one failed.
Have you? What Kickstarters you've backed? Are you talking about games?
Oh yeah, 30 Kickstarter games. In this
you're on
this
console,
year alone, I've probably got 10.
Are these games coming to console? These PC games you can't play.
These are games that come into console.
Oh, nice.
These are games that are coming to console. Depending on the Kickstarters, they normally do tell you if they're going to be coming, which platforms they're going to be on. And don't get me wrong, Steam is the main first one. But 9 times out of 10, if you hit a particular stretch goal, they normally say we're then going to do PlayStation, Xbox and Switch if we can hit this
Yeah.
particular stretch goal, sort of things. Which you know, they've got like a 30-day window. And within that, you'll normally gauge whether or not it's going to hit it or not, if you wish to, or if you're like me and you're happy to just give them a little bit of money to help them push the game along, because that's another thing. Just because sometimes they say it's not going to come out on that platform doesn't mean it's not going to come out later on. If it does well on Steam, that does help. Put them, helps them get the funds for moving it on to other platforms. So, but yeah, no. So far, I've got about 30 I've put on, and these are coming to the Xbox console, that I know of anyway. So, I said it's generally it's a good platform. Don't get it wrong. It's generally, I think it's Kickstarter and Indiegogo are the two main platforms where you can basically help out developers from the grassroots, as they say.
It's a good thing, it is. I'll just do a couple of shout outs to people in the chat. So we have VJ, transformational gaming. Welcome, mate. It's been a while. I've not seen you in a bit. Robbo HTRD, welcome. Pixel Slapper. And Chris Jones is in chat as well. Welcome. I still do that. I don't know if did I do that midweek gaming? I think I did, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did, yeah. Things don't change. But I would say this game here would be a game at VJ's alley, I think. Am I wrong here, VJ, with this game? It looks like your kind of game. It does.
I play all sorts of games. But if it's coming
Does
into
the pedigree interest you, I suppose?
I remember the Gensu Suikoden series. It was a very old series, and that's why I was just when you mentioned, I guess mentioned Suikoden. I was wondering, was it Gensu Suikoden? Was it PlayStation originally? Is that right?
Yes.
I love the way you and Chris can say these Japanese names. It's amazing. It is.
It's just practice, and then you just become familiar with them, and then it kind of rolls off the tongue. And to be honest with you, if there was a native speaking Japanese person, I'm 100% sure would be correct.
They say we'd be butchering it regardless.
Even though it sounds good, it's probably still getting it wrong. I'm sure C-Unit's getting it right, and I'm the one who's getting it wrong. So, and he's probably too polite to correct me. So I appreciate that, letting me keep face, which Japanese love to do in a conversation and in business dealings. But no, I think it's coming to Game Pass, but I might be getting confused here. But I'm sure I've seen the Eiyuden Chronicle logo for 1 and 2. Is that right, or am I confusing it with another familiar sounding game in Game Pass?
Well,
it might have been a game you recommended, Removable.
They had a game come out called Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, which is a prequel to 100 Heroes. And when they were going through the Kickstarter, it was a lot more successful than they thought. In the first half hour, the website crashed like 8 times because of everybody trying to support the game. Within the first 2.5 hours, they met like so many stretch goals. They had like $2.3 million, I think, raised in like the first 2.5 hours.
It's crazy. Goodness, it's good though.
Yeah, since they raised so much money, they met all the stretch goals. They had to keep adding stretch goals at the very end. And ultimately, Rising was supposed, from what I remember, Rising was supposed to be just like a set of mini games that was just like an online thing. It was never supposed to be a full game. But since they raised so much money, they kind of passed it off to a different studios. I can't remember. It's something Atari. I'm pretty sure is the developers that made Rising. The people that make 100 Heroes is called Rabbit Bear Studios, and I'm pretty sure they just kind of, overseen to make sure like story purposes, the characters right, stuff like that. But Rising was a side base scrolling action RPG, whereas 100 Heroes is more of a full game, turn based, all the bells and whistles of the old school Final Fantasies and stuff like that.
It's also got a... Go on.
No, go ahead, Removable.
I was just say, just looking from the actual trailer here, it seems to be a slight blend of different genres. It's not just tactical, is it? It seems to be a little bit more, a little variety of some genres. Am I getting that correct, or is it just actually a kind of like one for one from the previous PlayStation versions in terms of what is being given across?
I would say it's kind of like it's reminiscent of the old games of old, if that makes sense. But um, it's like 2D sprites or 3D sprites in like a 2D or 3D world, and just kind of updated with the colors, all that stuff to kind of make the pixel colors kind of pop out to people. But I'd say it's more of an updated version of the old school JRPGs like Final Fantasy VII, Legends of Dragoon, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, finally, someone who knows that. Oh, good.
And there's a lot of stuff that originally they said they were including, so they've not revealed to the public if some of that stuff's included. Like originally, there was supposed to be like some type of offline, where like you'd go offline, people could attack your town or something like that. It wouldn't affect like in-game story stuff. It's called like an asynchronous mode. There was supposed to be like a champion mode, and that's a lot of stuff we've not heard about. A lot of things that they did do, they wanted to make sure that inclusion was important. So I can't remember the exact number, but I think there's between 10 to 12 different languages that the game will be available in. They wanted everybody to be included. One of the main three characters is a person of color and female, which is pretty big for video games. We don't get to see that very often, so I was pretty happy that they put that in their game. And there's just like they've revealed, I think, maybe 3 mini games. There's like 8 to 10 different mini games. There's guild stuff. There's just stuff that I can't even think of right now. There's just so much stuff in this game. I think it's about 60 to 80 hours. If you want to go through and kind of like enjoy everything, but if you want to 100% complete the game, you're probably looking at over 100 hours.
As with most JRPGs.
Coming out, I think it's coming out. I don't know, when I saw it, it reminded me of, I'm not saying it's a similar game, but it reminded me a little bit of Octopath Traveler in terms of the visual style and the combat. And also when I saw this specific, sort of overworld combat, it reminded me that Unicorn Overlord is coming out at a very similar time as well. But I think this game perhaps incorporates the essence of RPGs that we've come to love into perhaps one unique package. But I'd have to see a lot more to be convinced of that. And the style of the visuals and everything, it reminds me of and the perspective reminds me a little bit of I don't know if you played Dragon Quest IX, I think it was on the 3DS.
I do remember it, yes.
Yeah, it reminds me a little of that. But there just seems to be mini games. And who doesn't love mini games and JRPGs?
They do help kind of adhere you to the gameplay and the game itself a little bit more. It gives you that kind of break where something is, sometimes you just, as you want to see here, you just want to go for a little bit of fishing, and that does help out, break you away and kind of split you off from like maybe the main path that you're dealing with, but at the same time still keep you invested within the game itself. Yeah,
you're kind of taking a break within the game, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't matter because you're still within the world that that you're encompassing. It's just that you're actually almost like taking a break within that world, which is always been a fantastic idea. It's one of the reasons why I kind of like the Yakuza series, because you could just literally quickly nip off and go and play on the arcades or something. And
that's
it's
true.
just a nice little break.
That's true. That is. I'll show the next game now. I have forgot how to say it though. Another game that C-Unit is looking forward to. Suikoden. Said it wrong, I know I have.
Suikoden.
Suikoden. Suikoden. There we go.
I could be pronouncing it wrong too, but that's how I pronounced it ever since I started playing.
It's a remaster. The demo I found, the what's it called on YouTube, was this is a trailer from the PS4 like a year ago. Was that correct? That's all I could find. I didn't look very well, but this is a PS4 trailer. Is it meant to be coming to like Xbox and everything as well?
Yes, it's going to be out on all platforms.
Okay. Is this
When you say it's a remaster, do you know which developer is doing the remaster? The reason I ask is that
Konami
there
has
is some
licensed-
just there. Go on, sorry.
As I was say, Konami doesn't really have a lot of development teams, so whoever is remastering it, some like past developers for like the later Suikoden entries,
Mhm.
I believe, is overseeing it. But for the most part, it's a licensed. Another studio has been like contracted to come do it. I do know that the lead character person for Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, Junko Kawano, went back to work with Konami to update and redraw and help out with the HD portraits that you're seeing on the screen.
I was going to say, knowing Konami, and I mean, no, I've got a lot of respect for Konami, regardless of what people think. But I was going to say they've probably got the Pro Evolution Soccer team doing the remaster.
That's one of the reasons why. Exactly, one of the reasons why I asked who the remaster developer team is, because they don't actually. Konami doesn't have the greatest of, should we say, history with remasters. But it all depends on the team, so it'd be interesting to see who the team is, that sort of thing. And don't get me wrong, there is some teams out there who do some fantastic remasters. Like Night Dive Studios. It's just it's just trying to find a team that's passionate about the game they're remastering and trying to keep to the ethos that was, the ethos of that game in the first place.
The one thing that surprises me the most about this game is IGN had a IGN First where they showed like pretty much a full gameplay battle with no hiccups and stuff like that. So I don't originally 100 Heroes and Suikoden the remasters were supposed to come out in 2023. The Eiyuden Chronicle said that they were going to delay it. They made their announcement, and then literally a day or two later, Suikoden also made an announcement. So we actually seen gameplay back then, so I'm confused on why this game's actually not out yet.
Do you think, to be honest with you, do you think it's one of those aspects where they've got something else in the works and they're like, do you know what? We'll hold it off for a better release date. When the original release date, was it like do you think it was going to be impacted by other particular games in that particular original release date?
They never set a specific 2023 release date.
Oh, do they like it's like Q4 or Q3 sort of thing?
Yeah, but one thing, a lot of different retailers had like there was one retailer in France that had spoiled their original street date, which was like March 9th or something along those lines. And then there was another retailer that had like October or something like that. So I don't know how, like I'm not the smartest business guy. I personally, and this is just Chris's beliefs, nobody else's, I think that they want to wait until Eiyuden Chronicle releases and then try to piggyback off of some of the
off the
success
coattails.
game.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see.
That makes sense. It makes sense that, if that does exceptionally well, people are going to have a slight thirst for it, isn't it? It's like a little trend that they're hoping that will just, elevate this one particular. And if it doesn't do well, then people are still kind of then look at this and hopefully, okay, well, this one's no good, but we'll try this one.
And they've
Makes sense.
They've released these games multiple times in the PlayStation Store. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've bought Suikoden 1 or 2 from the PlayStation Store, owned multiple physical copies. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying I think I've seen them available on sale as a bundle as well.
Yeah.
Did you say they were doing physical copies, or they
these games will have physical copies.
Now, have they said? Well, I'll just be a little bit more clarity on this one. When you say physical copies, is that a code in a case or a physical disc? Have they stated which is going to be?
They
Because we do
haven't. They
see a
haven't
start of that now.
actually stated it. They haven't
Ah,
actually
right,
stated it,
okay.
but I believe.
Sorry, Chris. I was
there'll
going
be
to say.
physical discs.
I was going to say just on one of the trailers, I saw. I hope I wasn't seeing things, but in the top right-hand corner, I saw the mention of 505 Games are partaking in publishing
Yeah, I
duties
saw that.
and
That
so
was,
knowing 505 Games, I think you're probably right that there will be actual physical units available in stores.
Physical on disc rather than actual codes in a box. Good. No,
Because
that's
I want
just,
to-
I
otherwise,
just hate
I'm
that.
just wondering. Otherwise, I'm wondering, what other duties is an actual global publisher fulfilling, because that's, well, other than PR, marketing, and if they're doing distribution, then they've got to be doing physical copies of the game. Because I don't think they'd need them for digital purposes.
Well, I mean, I suppose more of a PR suspect. If 505 is pretty good in terms of its PR, I don't know if I remember correctly. Because it's not going to be down to Xbox. I'm starting to see less and less Xbox advertisement, in terms of when it comes to the games they advertise. It's more being pushed onto the publishers to kind of take on that role. So, I mean, I could be wrong. What do you think, BJ?
For Game Pass, yeah. I mean, especially if is that right? C Unit, you Chris, it is coming to Game Pass, right? Day one.
Yes. I don't know about the expansions, but 100%. Rising was in Game Pass day one. 100 Heroes is in Game Pass. They met all their goals before they ever had a Game Pass deal. Like, they had planned for 2 or 3 expansions before the Game Pass deal. The Game Pass deal just added extra stuff. Like, fans got to vote on characters for the game. I think we voted on like 2 different characters to actually be one of the 2 of the 110 characters. The Xbox is the Game Pass deal just kind of adds a little extra money to spice things up. So that's probably why they took the extra time that they did.
Yeah, why don't you? To be honest, and that's probably going to be easy because it's going to be one of those things where you kind of, if you have that money, take your time to get it absolutely polished so that it will, it will hit running.
Suikoden, however, does not have a Game Pass deal, and so at least not announced yet. But who knows? It's a possibility. Konami does like money.
I'm trying to think how many Konami games are on Game Pass. It's about 50-50, isn't it? Or am I being a bit of an idiot? In general, is it about a 50-50 split?
I didn't know Konami had any games on Game Pass. Shows how much I know.
When you mean 50-50, can you just clarify that? Do you mean of their 50% of their library is on Game Pass?
I think it's 50-50 in terms of what has come out in the last couple of years. I thought is it a 50-50 split? Again, I'm kind of guessing. I'm trying to remind myself whether I'm just being a tit. But I thought, didn't Konami put on? They did put on. It has put on a number of games on Game Pass, hasn't it? But I don't think it's put on every. It doesn't put on. Its entire library.
I can only think of like the Mega Man series, the Pro Evolution Soccer series, the Winning 11 series, and the Metal Gear Solid series. But besides that, I can't recall seeing that many games developed.
I've never seen Castlevania on Game Pass or.
Yeah.
Always on sale, Castlevania. Always.
That's probably why I'm going wrong then, because I've always seen it. Maybe it's on sale. I'm always seeing it on Castlevania. I'm always seeing it on game. Yeah.
Yeah, not in game. I don't. Well, I'm not saying I've never seen a Konami game in Game Pass. I have, but not.
No. Yeah, that's why I thought I'd ask just in case, because it's like I sometimes I get confused. So maybe it's on sale. Because you're right, Castlevania I've seen numerous times on sale, and I did think they did do when it was around Xbox Gold free games. I think it was some of the Castlevanias were free.
They may have done
back years ago. But yeah, that's what I thought I'd ask. I thought in generally it's just because it would make. He said it could be a good deal. He said Konami does love money, but we'll see how it goes.
That's
I think
true.
Konami these days prefer a sure bet.
Let's face it, there's no such thing as a sure bet these days.
They're trying
I
their
mean,
hardest.
if you get a Game Pass deal, it's kind of a sure bet, right? You get guaranteed money up front.
Oh,
Guaranteed. It's guaranteed up front. It's to a certain number, isn't it?
I believe the Game Pass deals are all structured differently. All of them are, because they reckon some of them they pay for production costs. Some of them are paid per download. It's very, I don't know. I've heard different developers say different deals.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mr. Ramu. Depending on who you are, what you're doing, what you're building, what you're offering, and what your pedigree is, and whether you're a developer or publisher, it's definitely a case by case deal. But I don't know. I remember seeing a slide where they kind of earmark the number of dollars that they'll pay for specific games, depending on whether it's on day one or post release, which they seem to do with EA quite a lot. And again, that particular budget doesn't mean that that's what they pay. As you mentioned, Mr. Stubbs, that whether they're paying for production, whether they're paying on Goldmaster delivery, or whether they're paying for day one accumulated sales based on Xbox pre-orders. So yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be very difficult to get every developer, every publisher from and they'll come from all walks of life with all sorts of requirements to shoehorn them into a single sort of structured deal, which is dictated by Microsoft.
Just to mention, Back from the Dead did say that Castlevania games were on Games of Gold, but it's the 360 versions. So they did have a number of those.
Also, welcome to Back from the Dead. Thanks for popping in, and a friendly pest. Thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. But
He's gone quiet now. Come on, Stubbs.
I'm here. Well, we'll move on. Seeing as people mentioned physical media, we'll have a bit of a talk about that, because
physical media, sure.
Recently, I've got back into it because there was a game that
I moaned at you. Let's just be honest. I moaned at you.
Removal Sanity was. I was moaning that he reviewed a game that was £50, and I couldn't find it. It was basically on sale when it's £50. I thought that's a bit expensive. He goes, buy it on disc. It's £10. So, yep, I got it. Well, I got it for birthday. Birthday. For on disc, and it was a £10.
Yes.
And ever since then, I've been buying more and more games on disc. I've got Sonic Superstars. No, hang on. That's it. That's the right name, isn't it?
Yes, you have, yep.
I've got that on disc. I've got FIFA 23 on disc. I haven't played it yet. What else have I got recently? It's a Star Wars game, but it's a Lego game. It's Saga. Something Saga. I've not tried it yet.
Star Wars Saga, isn't it?
Something like that.
The complete edition or something like that? Yeah.
I've got that on disc, and I've got Wild Hearts on disc. I've got to try some of these, but I've got them all installed. But it's made me realise that disc. I went completely on the console. I went completely digital. But if you want to save yourself money, the way forward is to buy discs, because they're so much cheaper. They really are.
And it's also good for preservation. That's the thing as well.
It is good for preservation, but I'm more into disc, because back in the day, when I had my DJ decks, I used to play it at vinyl. Yes, everyone, vinyl. And there was no like the sound of the well, Technics 1210s Mark IIs actually, but the crackle was quite good for DJ decks. And physical media, I'm all into buying it again, because although Game Pass is good, don't get me wrong, but not every game is going to come to Game Pass that you're after. It's just physically impossible. But there is one thing about Game Pass, because there's too much variety. I know you should never moan about too much variety, but I struggle with what to play half the time. because I download because I've got a good internet connection. I just download whatever, and I've got too much variety on offer. And I struggle with what to play. I do.
Well, one of the things that I've spotted with is if you treat Game Pass like Blockbuster, that's an easier way of dealing with it.
That's a good way of dealing with it. That is. But now I'm back on the physical media train. I am, just to let everyone know. I thought I'd talk about it because I went all digital. I did, and
then you saw a few things that was coming out on the interwebs, wasn't you? That made you a little bit scared.
What's that? What made me scared?
A certain digital media was being removed.
Is it?
Yeah, there was certain digital media that was being removed. It kind of went a little shock through the gaming community, and I think it was actually a couple of films that was being removed, wasn't it, from the PlayStation Store?
They were moving stuff off the PlayStation stores, different
movies. And they weren't refunding either, so you'd paid for it.
Well, it's not. That's not entirely like PlayStation's fault, but you know what I mean. It's
no, it's not PlayStation's fault. But again, it's like, as you said, you've paid for something, and they weren't refunding it. You know, it's not it's not the consumer's fault either. To be honest with you, it'd be like you buying like a DVD, and me going right about 6 months after, walking into your house saying, "That's it. See you later. You've added it now. I'm taking it back."
If you want to get technical, I suppose with physical media, I'm not saying they will or they could, but if you were like thinking of a doomsday scenario, they could, like, I don't know, send some code out to all the Xboxes and PlayStations, make this game not work. I don't know how you do that, but I bet they could.
No, but that'd be thrown beside, because basically all you do is you just wouldn't download the patch.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's a fair point. That is. So
or you'd have a system that has never been on the internet, and you could still play.
But that wasn't my only reason. Just my main reason for getting discs is the games are cheaper, really.
Yeah, I do believe that's an issue for both platforms, not just Xbox. Is that the digital side of things is much more. The Xbox store is a hell of a lot more dearer than your average storefront, and it's hard pushed to see why. To be honest with you, especially when as you said, it's like you'll see something on Amazon for £30 or $40, and then you'll see it on the Xbox Play Store as around $60, and you're like, well, why? What's the difference?
I'll tell you why. Convenience.
Convenience, it is. Yeah, that's a little bit, but.
Sorry, Removal, can you just say that? Can you just say that again? You were saying it's full price pretty much on the digital site versus.
Yes. You're looking at least $20 difference on, say, Amazon.
Oh, Amazon digital or Amazon buying it physical?
Buying it physical.
Yeah. So for Amazon, right, and most of these big retailers like GameStop, and is it Game still in the UK? I don't know who's.
Yeah, Game, PC World, PC, is another one. Amazon is probably the largest. Now, admittedly, they do buy in bulk, and so that's where they can actually reduce the actual the costs of this. But this could be like a year later, and the actual Xbox storefront doesn't change.
I don't know about the UK, but if you look at Europe, for sure, after a month or 60 days, pretty much physical games, if they're not selling, they're reduced in price, right? That's right. Yes.
Right. Yes, that's very much
the way that retailers work versus digital stores. Digital stores will always, obviously, I've always spoke to you about in Asia, right? The fact that retail facings are diminishing, and that's Xbox was pretty much first, actually, and Sony followed suit pretty soon after, where the limiting amount of retail facings, or paying for or paying for as much retail space or real estate in retail stores. So they've actively maneuvering consumers or re-educating or reprogramming them to buy digital. And the reason why you find Amazon, Game, or GameStop reducing physical unit pricing is that they normally buy the stock. If it's big AAA releases from first party, it's probably pretty much on firm sale, but they get 90 days credit. So within 90 days, if they haven't sold through the content prior to paying the bill, they will reduce the product to get it out through the door, and then settle the payment for that product rather than pay for it from a cash flow perspective. And they're ruthless like that with all industries, and pretty much say, look, if you're not going to price protect us, then we'll just reduce the price, reduce the value of the product, and just push it out before we have to prior to paying your bill, because they don't want to pay for the product and then wait for it to sell through at full price. That's pretty much how they deal with everything, not as a game but as a commodity. So in the US alone, I can speak for the US, but and probably C Unit can as well. But like when it's Thanksgiving and Christmas, you can find some fantastic pricing on Amazon, and it's completely, sort of mind-boggling to consider that. Well, by the time you've considered why is this game cheap, why they're doing it, then just pick it up, because no doubt when they run out, they'll restock it and it'll go back to full price, because the trade price they're purchasing at hasn't changed. So
at least for the UK, when it drops in price, I have very rarely, if it's say the first month, it might go back up in price. It might, as you rightly said, it might have those deals. But after 3 months, once it's dropped in price, it pretty much stays at the dropped price.
Yeah.
The trouble is, I've never seen that with the digital storefronts.
No, you won't, right?
And that's where that's where I think there's the bone of contention is. It's.
Do you not have like Christmas sales or Easter sale where the price does come down, or is that even rare?
There is sales. You do get, like the IGN deal, or it'll be it'll be a particular publisher deal that'll happen throughout the year. So Konami deal 1 week, or it'll be an EA deal for another week, sort of thing. But then they go straight back up to the full price again. It's like, you'll see games on the Xbox storefront or PlayStation storefront. Well, I can't tell you about the PlayStation because I've been there for a while. But at least in the Xbox storefront, it's like a year out. It's been there for almost like a year and a half, almost 2, and it's still at your $60. And you're like, why? Why is that the case? There could be a couple. There's a couple of games. Generally, I'd say it's just generally they don't knock them down very quickly. So I'm trying to think of like a game that's been out for about a year or two that's still at its full price. Obviously, From Software's a bit different. They do pretty much retain their prices regardless. But I'm talking about other games.
Do you remember Elden Ring? Right, because I remember, Elden Ring. I was speaking to some people in Europe at the time, and Bandai Namco were actually. And Take-Two will definitely do this, right? When GTA, they were limiting they were cutting allocation as much as 50% to retailers, because obviously retailers are taking a massive chunk of the margin, and obviously VAT is quite high in Europe, because here when you buy a game, you pay the sales tax on top of the RRP, where in Europe it's already included, right? The RRP is inclusive of VAT, so that's the major difference, right?
Yeah.
So when people say to you, "Oh, we pay $70," we don't. We pay $70 plus 7 or 8% tax on top. So unless you buy it digitally, in California at least, I can speak to, is that when I buy games digitally, there is no sales tax for whatever reason. And I think it's state by state. Maybe Chris can add something to that. But they were cutting down allocation, because and obviously consumers weren't getting their physical copies. But obviously that for that specific game, it convinced people to take the plunge, or have no choice basically, but to go and buy it digitally, where obviously there's a significantly more profit share just for Bandai and for Sony or Microsoft, cutting the retailer out completely, not having to give them what they need, not what they need, what they hope for, shall we say. So there's a lot of business strategies going on in the background for publishers and first party to maximize their profits. But I can't say they find the same thing here, removable, because Thanksgiving and at Christmas and in the summer, there are some fantastic opportunities to
You'll get those deals
three or four
happen.
big
Yeah,
games.
I'm not saying those deals won't happen, but generally the price is pretty consistently fixed.
Yeah.
Without those those holiday deals, they don't drop dramatically, at least over here.
Not in line with
that's why the
not in
physical
line with
media is a much
not in
better
line with
option, because
physical
it's
copies.
it's the digital side of things. You'll see a game that's been out for about a year and a half, and it'll still be at its $60-$70 price tag, and you'll then see the physical one. It'll be half that, maybe even quarter, three-quarters of that reduced. So it just like
Absolutely.
makes sense to then just like, well, why purchase it? So that's not to say there hasn't been an increase in buying digital media. There has been, without a doubt. We've seen that in the stats. We've seen that in the reduction of buying physical media. I think our physical media fluctuates in the UK. It kind of, and I know they still use the stats for physical media, which I don't understand why. But
Yeah,
there we
they
go.
do. The community loves to use it in big countries like America. They like to bring them up. I'm not on about you seeing it, but you see it all over the internet, don't you? The UK box sales chart.
I think the box sales. See, I think companies like is it VG chart, not VG charts. There's a chart track in the UK. MediaMarkt is it in Germany and France? See those guys that provide the physical media data have direct relationships with the retailers. You see, then if they want to do the digital stuff, Sony and Microsoft have got to provide that information, or third-party publishers have got to provide that information. But if they don't have that agreements or relationships, or
You're not
those
going to do it.
publishers
No,
don't
no.
want to provide that, they simply don't want to provide that information, they won't. The only time, but with the retailers it's different because they're free to provide that information. That's why they'll use chart, which is a physical led report system. And I mean, the only time you can really gauge how digital media is selling compared to physical is when I see the Sony reports, right, where they actually split down first party sales, physical, digital, which is 70-30 or 72-28 at the moment. The last time, well, it's been consistently like that, hasn't it, for the last few quarters?
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, I just understand the physical side of things, because at least at this current stage, you're looking at a quarter of the market, not even potentially that when it comes to the physical market now. It's I wouldn't say it's a good indication of the gaming, the gaming licenses in general, because it's become such a small aspect. It's kind of, I feel it's kind of misleading using the physical media. Obviously the clear, as you said, statistics would be the digital, but if no one's providing you that data, I suppose it's the only thing they've got to go on. But again, that's still a kind of misleading take, because it's not picking up three-quarters of the elements that are being sold. The trouble is, what else have they got? Where else have they got to go on?
That's true. Seeing it, what's your thoughts on physical media? Do you still buy physical?
Well, you talked about you're going back to physical media.
I still use digital as well. I still use it as well, digital, but I have got physical too as well.
I've actually gone more so buying more digital stuff, but I'm kind of like 50-50 on it. Like when it comes to like video game franchises that I love, like for example, Suikoden, I still own the first and second game on PlayStation. I still own 3, 4, 5, and Tactics on PS2. I still have the Game Boy Card Stories game. I still have 1 and 2 in Japanese on PSP, even though I don't have a PSP. And then I have the last game that they made from 2012, which is an all Japanese version import. still sealed. So like if it comes to like a franchise like that or like Mass Effect, I still own hard copies of all Mass Effects collection purposes. I see me still buying physical media for specific aspects, but then like for example, Baldur's Gate 3, I just purchased that last night.
Yep.
Like I played the old games, but I don't have like that physical or emotional attachment to the franchise like I do other stuff. So like there's no need for me to have a physical version of that or like and I understand why retail developers and publishers don't want to send so much to retailers. Obviously it saves them money, and we kind of see it in different aspects of gaming in general. You look at situation, I don't want to veer too much from the topic, but the situation like with E3, studios and publishers and developers realize they could save more money by just kind of, doing their own thing in their own studios and not having to pay for that kind of stuff. So as much as, it is kind of scary, the situation with PlayStation, a lot of people lost, a lot of movies in there. Yeah. They lost their library. And it's scary to see. We obviously can't predict the future. I don't see stuff like that happening super often. At least I hope not. But you mentioned deals like Amazon stuff. Where I live in Indiana, in the U.S., we pay sales tax. It doesn't matter if it's digital or physical. We still have a sales tax. So like, I got Baldur's Gate Digital Edition, Digital Deluxe Edition, and it was $79 before taxes, $85 something after taxes.
Wow.
So still, and I don't see as many deals as you do. Like you talked about, like a month or two after a physical game comes out, you might see, a reduced price, and it stays at that reduced price. Usually, me personally, I mean, I don't go to the stores every day, but when I do go to a store and I do see a deal, like I could go home and get on Xbox or PlayStation, for example, and a lot of times, based on what the game is, obviously, like big time games like Final Fantasy VII Remake or God of War, something like that. Here, there's not any sales in the stores or on the consoles. Sorry, go
Chris,
ahead.
It's very different in the US. You see, in the US, the physical listed pricing at GameStop and Electronic Boutique, when they were still around back in the day, retail price points hold in the US for some reason. Just in Europe, it's far more cutthroat, and you have a where the US GameStop, versus mom and pop stores, right? But in Europe, you've got retailers from across the board, from supermarkets to electronic stores to card shops to specialist retailers, independents, and basically, I don't know what you would call companies like Fnac and MediaMarkt. They're like electronic hypermarkets, and basically the way what they do is they take video games and they cut the price even on day one, and they use it as a way to pull consumers in. Where in the US, you're right that GameStop, EB, and Fry's and all those guys and Walmart, retail price points hold. And I think the primary reason is that in the US, a lot of the big retailers, they can command sale or return of a percentage, if not a whole batch, when they buy content from the publishers. And basically on that basis, that publishers say, well, that's fine, but you're going to have to maintain retail price point. You cannot discount. I don't know if that's still the case now, but in Europe, it's pretty much for retailers, if they buy the product, they own it and they've got to pay for it.
That's right, yeah.
Buy a lot and it's not moving, like Removable said, is like, why is it that retailers cut the price after 3 months? Et cetera, and why is it that digital storefronts, hardly ever give us, a bite of the cherry? For us that can't afford to pay full price for every single release, which there seems to be a dozen a month at the moment, of games we want to play. So that's been the case for me, from my observations for the last 30 years. Nothing has changed in terms of price point structures. And the other territory I would say is Japan. Japan is very much like the US. Price points don't come down. If anything, they go up.
You think it's much more of a European thing where the
Very European, yeah.
the reduction of games is a more common aspect.
It's almost cultural. It's a cultural phenomenon that games have to be discounted on day of release.
And Nintendo never has sales.
Like
I've never seen a Nintendo sale in my life.
Oh no, in the UK, Nintendo games don't drop. That's
yeah. That's true.
They stay at their price.
Well, I would say if you go to second-hand shops, which is effectively we've got places called CXX. Those sort of second-hand where people have bought second-hand or sold off second-hand games, those will be reduced dramatically.
Unless it's rare,
you know why?
And they rip you off.
It's still rare. Yeah, it's still rare.
You know why that is? Sorry, go ahead, Chris. No, I was just going to say. No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
I was going to say real quick. You talk about secondhand shops. I actually have a friend that I'm really close with. He owns a game shop, literally like 10 minutes from where I live at, and he'll buy. It's the trading card board game type shop like that, but he also buys and sells video games. And one thing I do see is, depending upon the franchise, prices actually go up. For example, I think it was Pokemon Sword, for example, for the Switch. I do a lot of different Pokemon articles for Lognet, and I had no use because a new Pokemon came out. So I went and gave it to him. Whereas normally when you would take something to like a secondhand shop, you're going to get probably 50% of what you paid for it. I actually got almost full value for what I paid for a Nintendo game. So.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't get that over here.
Oh no, they want to give you a few quid if you're lucky.
So for if it's something that's just come out, I would say okay. I'm trying to think of a game. Okay, we'll use Sonic Superstars as a rough guide. It's only come out. It's only been out since like about a month. If I took that into Sex today, they would probably give me about $10 to $15.
If you're lucky, yeah.
If you're lucky,
and that would be in-store credit. That wouldn't be cash. That'd be in store.
Yeah, and then they'd sell it for 35 to 40. So you get at least, you probably get about 5 to 10% of its actually worth.
You know why that is in Europe, right? Is because about 15 years ago, Nintendo had direct distribution partners in each of the European territories, one distributor per territory, and they changed that. And what they did is that they set up in Germany, I think it was, where their head office is. And what they did is that they kept their PR and marketing teams in each of the different territories. And this, the 5 major territories, let's just call it that: EFIG, England, France, Italy, Germany, and Spain. And what they did is that they said to all retailers, "We're not supplying you direct anymore. And if GameSteel and Dixon's and all that, if you want our product, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to either pay us up front or buy from a distributor in the UK or in your territory or in your region that will give you the credit." So what you had distributors, them buying from Nintendo, paying in advance, buying the product and then placing it in game and retail stores at a reduced margin. And because the most important thing to retailers is terms. Because they survive basically on cash flow, right? But I'm not going to chronicle the challenges of game right over the last 15 years or so. Virgin Media, whatever it is now, or Xavi, etc. But yeah, that's how Nintendo got around it, because they just said, look, we're just not in the business of giving people terms, and our content and our product is strong enough to do that. And then obviously the Wii U turned up. They struggled for a while, and then obviously they've had an upturn with the Switch, where everybody wants their content, and that's why it's very hard to find Nintendo stuff discounted in Europe.
Something else, I don't know.
I'm telling you complete rubbish, and I really so.
I don't know if it's the same in California. I'm assuming that's where you're from, VJ, or the UK. but I know
I'm from planet
some
Earth,
places.
basically. I reside in a place called California.
Okay,
Currently.
some places across the U.S. are getting rid of their entire they call them electronic sections. So where you normally go to like a Walmart or
Yeah.
specifically Target, I guess has been the topic. They're pretty much getting rid of all their physical media. Period. So
No, I saw that on. That's one of the reasons why we brought the topic up. We saw it on, I think it was on X, where it was like shelves with just like 4 or 5 physical cases on it. Absolute dead shelves with just nothing in it.
Yeah, I mean,
and I was like, wow, really?
is that in the UK removable? Is that in the UK retailers or US?
No, no,
America.
no. This was American.
Yeah, it's over here.
It's American retailers. I think, yeah, generally the UK still does. They're much more reduced
I
now.
will say something.
You're still,
If you go into a shop, you'll find less Xbox physical than you will PlayStation or Nintendo. They
but
stock
obviously
less.
you'll still see it.
Xbox.
So, for instance, we've got like food malls, like called Tesco's and Sainsbury's. You'll still see physical copies within those, but they'll be just reduced. So
Asda.
you'll probably get, I don't know, 100 games, and it'll be 100 games of, I don't know, 20 different franchises, and that'll be it
across all formats removable.
across all formats. Yeah. That's a food stall system where if you go to places like SEX or PC World, or those ones will have they'll have a bigger collection, but not as nothing like it was back in like the Blockbuster days where you saw hundreds and hundreds of products.
Yeah. Do you have Chris? Do you have Best Buy in Indiana?
Yes, that's the store I was trying to think of. I don't know why I said Target. Yeah, Best Buy.
I went to Target and to Best Buy over Thanksgiving and over Christmas, because I remember telling Removable not this year, just gone in 2020, back end of 2022. I bought like 3 or 4 AAA games for like $90, like Resident Evil 8, etc. But
he showed me this how bad it was. He showed me the receipt to prove it as well. I was swearing at him.
Full price, brand new. But the thing is, this I don't want to sort of mention it again, but basically, what I was mentioning earlier, and I think we mentioned this on the show like about a year and a half ago, is that Microsoft have actively in Japan, removed all retail facings about 24 months ago, and Sony have been doing the same because of softmap, Laos, big camera, and basically reducing all retail facings in those stores to get consumers to pick up and purchase more content digitally. Yeah. And obviously for Microsoft, it's I would say it's more to do with the fact that hey, look, you don't need to buy big digital media. You don't even need to buy physical media, because there's so much content in Game Pass. Just pay us, and we'll make sure that our digital library is stocked. But of course, games may come and go as we please. And that's the way.
Well, it's as you said, it's pushing that subscription service, which is becoming more mainstream. And again, I'm never happy with a subscription service, because a subscription service, people forget you don't own it. The subscription service is effectively like the digital version of Blockbuster. You go in there, you rent your movie, and then you gave it back. And that's how I kind of see it. Even with the buying digitally, you can still be taken away from you at any point. That's why I do believe holding on to physical media is a good thing, just for your own sanity. The one thing I said, I've brought up numerous times is, with physical media, you can pass on your collection to your kids, to friends, to family.
Your sanity is removable, though.
It is true. It is indeed. But you can't do that with, well, as far as well, I don't think you can do that with digital. You cannot pass your collection to anyone else. And I've got a gut feeling, and it's something that's just the further we get further down the line, the further we as gamers get older, I've got a gut feeling there'll be a clause in there. I mean, again, I haven't checked the clauses, but there'll be a clause in there that once you've popped your clogs, Microsoft retains all your gaming content.
But one
Even
thing,
If it's not, if it's not physical.
removable, can you I mean, heaven forbid, let's just say Mr. X popped his clogs and left his login credentials.
they don't check, do they? There's no system, VJ, to check that you're dead.
No, I'm just asking the question because I don't know.
I suspect so, because let's face it, a clock. Okay, here's a perfect example. You go onto your Xbox, they know how long you've been an Xbox member, right? You come up with a 10 years. They come up with 15 years badge. They come up with a 30 years badge. Do you honestly think at 100 years or 90 years that's not going to be,
oh, yeah.
Click, hang on. That's it.
What if I say
gone.
I've been reincarnated?
But no, you think about it. It's, you're not going to be able, if it's a physical media, you're not going to be able to pass that on to any of your family. Say you've got a nice collection that you want to pass on to your family, and I know I do. I know it's sad, but I do. I want to pass on my gaming collection to my kids. Let them play it and let them enjoy it. It's
I think this is an interesting point, and some legal should look at the fact that, hey, look, as long as the account is being paid for, whether it's being passed on or not, and being used, as you're saying, basically, well, why can't it be, as long as we're paying the bills, regardless of how many hundreds of years it's been operated, and as long as we're not doing anything against the community, and we're paying our bills in terms of Game Pass or whatever, and collecting our points, etc. I don't see why it can't be allowed for the consumer and his family or offspring to use it in perpetuity, unless Microsoft and Sony want to be really greedy about it, right? And
they're a company. Let's face it. Of course they are. They're going to be,
And I'm just wondering, is that it's not as like it's not as if I can't speak to this, but legal, I haven't seen anything. And Chris, you must know this sort of stuff in the sort of in your trade, right? This stuff must come up.
It's not really particularly in the writer's trade that we know, but like they know that when they put out the disclaimer, because when you every game you log on, it says it pretty much got this page. You scroll down, and they know that the majority of the population, 99.9% of people, is just going to scroll down and click the I agree to the terms and services. Like I guarantee there's something in there that would say something along these lines, but I'll be honest, I've never read a terms and conditions of any game I've ever played in my life.
You've never you've never met removable sanity before.
I'll tell you now, this way, if you don't agree with terms and services, you can't play the game. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But so it's a catch-22. If you play that, you've got to. There is no, I can't. It's like do you want to use your cookies or do you want our data? You can't play the game without agreeing to it. It's a kind of a false premise that you're agreeing to it. You're not agreeing to it. You're being forced to take on board. Right? Exactly. You're being forced to purchase.
Can you imagine Chris taking his $85 Baldur's Gate 3 back to the store and saying, listen, I want a full refund. Yeah, but it's open. Yeah, but I don't agree with the terms and conditions. I want my money back.
The difference between stores here, where I live at, is you can't take an open game back to the store. However, digital games, majority of the time, if it's within a certain time frame, you can return those games to get your money back.
Yeah, I think is it like 90 days or something like that? It's something like that. But this is the thing. I think it's going to get to a point where as I kind of alluded to, my generation, us old farts, is going to be one of the very first generations that will be gaming in our 80s and 90s. We'll be a complete generation, and our collections. That's the thing that's going to be interesting. How that affects the gaming conversation itself. Because I said, I can guarantee a lot of people will probably be like, no, I want to pass on my gaming collection to my offspring, to my, in some format like that. Obviously, there's some people that won't. They'll be like, I've paid for it, it's mine. I'm taking it to the coffin with me, sort of thing. But I know there's some others will be. With physical media, you can do that. There is no issue with that. You can just simply go, here you go, kids, that's yours, bam. And it's got to be looked into at some point, because it's not many years down the line where that's going to happen. It is going to get to the point where, I don't know, someone's going to make a bit of a stink and a fuss.
It's going to take somewhat. What Luke still says is right. We understand that digital content is licensed, so the concept of ownership does not apply to that anyway. You can't pass on your licenses you do not own. That's true. But if governments and regulators, etc., pushed for something hard and really wanted it to happen, they'd make it happen. But they'd have to be forced. It's like Apple with the USB-C cable. They fought tooth to nail with the EU over this. They spent millions upon how much ever they spent, and they lost, and they were forced. And now they're trying to make out it's their idea. It's a great idea to save the world with USB-C cable. But what I'm saying is, it probably won't, no one's going to come out swinging for this to happen. It's been 10, 20, 15 years now. Nobody's come out with a strong enough case or wanted to. I don't think anyone cares.
Well, it's going to take something. It's going to take something big. It's going to take either a famous person to say something amazing. I don't know, some celebrity to go, I've just lost my dad's celebrity games, who's he had all of his historical data on it, and I wanted to go back and play his games, or he left me them and I can't play them. What the hell is going on? PlayStation, Sony, what the hell is going on? He's left me these, and they're dead. They're dead, basically dead discs. Oh, sorry, dead content. Discs will obviously still be. It won't be an issue. But it's going to happen at some point. It's just whether or not the consumer is going to kick up enough of a fuss. Because let's face it, it's going to be the consumer that kind of dictates where this goes. And if there's enough of a fuss, then the companies will, do something about it. If there isn't a lot of fuss, it's a win for them. They retain. It forces the next generation to pay for. Have to repay for every single thing that their parents bought, regardless of whether they've inherited it. It's just one of these things. It's going to be happening. It's one of the things that as gamers get older, there's certain topics that I think we're going to have to end up having a discussion about. It's getting close. That's all I'm just saying. And no one seems to be thinking about it.
It's definitely. I think it's definitely food for thought.
I think it is. I think it's one of those things, but it's one of those things. It's like accessibility in gaming. People make it out. It's like, it's accessibility in gaming is just for a minority. Until you realise, no, it's not for a minority. It's for the majority, because you will get old. Your eyesight will get worse. Your fingers' dexterity will get worse as you get older. So these options, these benefits, is only going to help you when you're around 80. Trust me, it's for the majority. Does it help the minority right now? 100%. But you will get to a point where your eyesight will fail. You'll want some of these options in there. So, it's one of these things that we are, as gamers, I think, a little bit short-sighted sometimes. And I think it'll be, I think it's going to be one of these conversations that needs to be talked about.
Are you just making sure that are you mentioning all of this because you want From Software to listen in? Yeah, make
No, actually, ironically, From Software is probably the ones I don't want them to touch. I kind of,
it's co-op. Can we get on? Oh, let me just wheel my chair over to the
I
TV and I'll give you a
like
shout.
a little bit more of an easier, multiplayer. But ironically, From Software is probably the one that I kind of like. When I'm about 80, 90, do you think I'm going to be playing Elden Ring? As much as I'd like to, probably not. There's gonna be limits to even my temperament at that age. But it's one of those things. I know you're joking. There's going to be better. I just want to see, it's going to be us old farts that's going to hopefully push things on. Like one of the things I keep mentioning is that currently right across the world, there has always been an epidemic of loneliness in the older generation. And I think gaming potentially has the option to completely destroy that, especially at least in the gaming community.
That
whole
generation. That's a great thought. Do you remember Xbox's advert where he's playing with his dad? Remember the advert?
Yeah.
That was a great one, wasn't it? That made me think of that rumor something about loneliness.
Forza Horizon.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Do you know why I remember that? Because Tushi made a really fantastic comment. Because they bring the Xbox home, right, and they put on Forza, and Tushi came up and said that actually is not an accurate depiction because the stage of the game that they're playing takes about 2 hours to get there because you've got to do all these other missions to get to the market.
Yeah. That's just like him.
It's not about plugging kicking off multiplayer straight off the bat. I thought that's really fun. I don't remember that Twitter message from him. I thought it was hilarious.
It is, yeah. But it's one of those things that I suspect. I look at it this way: as an 80-year-old or 90-year-old, I'm still going to be online gaming with my other 80-year-old, 90-year-old friends, which means I'm going to be potentially less lonely than say the 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds now. So it has the potential to kind of, I'd like to think, remove that loneliness that is in our older generation. There is so many positives that we just seem to forget about as we get older. But there's also a few negatives that if we don't discuss and talk about, it's going to catch up with us pretty quickly.
Even if they seem like insurmountable legally, I think if they're not raised as topics for us to even discuss, right, regardless of what the legal parameters may or may not be today, well, that's what championing change is all about. Right?
Exactly, and this is exactly the same thing when it comes to accessibility. Champions the changes now, so that you, as a generation, will benefit them later on. It's not just for disabled and minority groups, who have issues in terms of physicality. It's going to be beneficial to everybody as you get older. And we sometimes are a bit short-sighted, in terms of our immortality, in terms of, how that affects gaming. And it's one of these things that does need to be discussed about, but we've kind of, I rarely ever see it discussed.
The deterioration of your biological vessel.
Exactly, and it's like the only time I lie. The only time I've ever seen these gaming in terms of people and senior citizens is when you see like gaming grandma, and it was like, oh my god, it's amazing, a gaming grandma. It's like, you do realize in about 20-30 years time there's going to be a whole generation that's going to be like that.
Yep.
It's
going to be in the millions, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's going to be in the millions. And you think about it, that's still customers who will be spending their money. They may be spending some of their pension money on games. So there's an audience to cater to.
Definitely. I've got a question for Chris, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chris, I know you've picked up Baldur's Gate 3 for an obscene amount of money, which we can only dream of. And I was just wondering, did you play Divinity Original Sin 2 by any chance?
I have not played either of the Divinity's Original Sin. I need to. So Baldur's Gate 3 was actually a reward. I won Writer of the Year for lordsofgaming.net for 2023. So that was a reward.
Well done.
So technically,
Well done.
I probably wouldn't have bought Baldur's Gate 3 myself. But yeah, I just want
That's
to
a
make
nice
sure
reward.
that was stated. But I've not played either of the Divinities, no.
I've put it on screen now, VJ, for you. But Divinity Original Sin 2.
Yeah, my previously,
VJ
I
has
think it
been
was,
championing it, I should say.
well, Removal. I put a lot of hours into MechWarrior 5, as you probably know, about 350. But
You haven't done the DLC yet, have you?
no. But
Which is just another one's dropped as well, by the way.
but for Divinity Original Sin 2, I got a message from PlayStation, and I was just shocked. 500 and hours, 2 months.
Wow.
To finish the game. And I put 500 hours into it. More than Zelda and
more than Zelda. Oh, right.
More than Zelda, more than MechWarrior. I put more hours into MechWarrior 5 than I did Zelda, and Zelda was, well, you guys know how many.
Yeah, exactly.
But Divinity Original Sin 2, yeah, astonishing game.
Well, it means now you're just perfect.
Well.
Yeah, it just means now that you're ready for Monster Hunter World.
I've actually reinstalled that. I have to give it another go. I have, because the player base is picked up in it.
Yeah, it's got back to its original player base the moment it launched, is what I'm hearing, which is amazing.
I was surprised because when I saw that, I know Removal, you're quite like a connoisseur, right, when it comes to Monster Hunter World. But I had no idea.
Only that game, not the Monster Hunter series. That was the only one game I've ever played.
No, of course. But I wasn't going to label you in any way. But I was just surprised to see Mr. Stubbs, mention that he's going to get back into it, because I had no idea that he played games. Sorry, that was a fraudulent slip there. That he dominated.
I own the game.
Well, he's played the tutorial.
I was just.
I am surprised. Seeing it. I am the tutorial game. If you didn't know, that's as far as I get.
To be honest with you, he could make it. Honestly, he could make a channel out of all tutorial gaming. He could easily just make a whole channel out of tutorial gaming. He'd be up there with PewDiePie, I think.
And then I move on. Tutorial, bye. I'm off to something else.
I try to skip the tutorials if I can.
But no, it's I think visually you're in for a treat. But with
it is a good. It is no. But Monster Hunter is a very good game. It's just that again.
So what's the difference then? Monster Hunter and this Monster Hunter Rise. Then what's the difference?
I'm not familiar with Monster Hunter Rise. Monster Hunter World is, at least for me, it was a much more. It took the Monster Hunter series and elevated it to the next generation level of graphics and gameplay.
From what I saw, that Rise is obviously was targeted for the Switch. It's just a slightly watered down version of World, but obviously it was designed for the Switch. But my only regret with Monster Hunter World is that I didn't know you like prior to that game. If I had known you like a couple of years earlier, that is a game that I would have like co-opted with you to death.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, that would have been perfect for us, because the amount I went through that game with randoms in terms of hunting the monsters, and you do have to grind out a vast number of monsters to get different armor types, different attributes, different aspects. The problem I found is that when you get to, it's a bit like From Software a bit, the multiplayer isn't intuitive in terms of linking up with each other. And secondly, the grind once you've completed the game for specialized gems. So if you've got a vast array of weapons, and to make your weapons super powerful, you have to collect a variety of gems. These gems drops after killing monsters. The trouble is the drop rate of some of these specialized gems is horrendous. You
remember you
could, I remember seeing one of the ones that I wanted, I did a bit of research on it. One of the ones I wanted, and this is what stopped me, was that it would have given me, I think, like a 15% critical damage. So it's a good upgrade.
chunk.
But I would have probably had to put in another 75 hours grinding to get it. That was the drop rate of that one gem. It was that
Removal,
stupid. I was like, phew.
I've got a question for you there. Is it, and I don't know about Capcom in terms of their microtransaction strategy, but was it possible to buy that gem via microtransaction, or that wasn't the case?
Not that I was aware of, no.
Yeah.
Because, and to be honest, I don't think I would have done it anyway, but the drop rate was just so extreme. But
yeah.
as far as I'm aware of, I don't think you could. It was all in-game in that regards. So that was good, I think. But it was just the actual drop rate was, I don't know, it was like 0.02% chance.
What do you think the thought strategy was behind the design and conceiving and designing an aspect of the game like that?
One of the things, and I know the reason why, it was to encourage you to try the other weapons. So there's a vast array of weapons there. And the game, and to me, as I always do, I focused on one particular weapon and I wanted to grind it out to the very top tier. And it's when you get to that last top tier, you've just got to grind the hell out of it. Unfortunately for me, it was too much of a grind. I think they just too much grind. I think they put it in to try and push you to move on to the other weapons. So if I remember correctly, it's about 20 other weapons.
But that breaks. Sorry, remember. But what that does is that, look, I play a lot of RPGs, and I'm obviously Chris is a huge fan, and obviously Stubbs is a connoisseur. But one of the especially, what was the recent one that came out during the summer? That RPG that came out. Not crowdfunded. I know it was crowdfunded. It was Sea of Stars, for example, one of the latest ones I played. And I played through that game, and I continued to play through it game. Not 75 hours, to grind out for a single weapon, but most of the RPGs I play, and if I choose a specific weapon or type of weapon, is to get the ultimate version of that weapon. That's like one of the key points for me to play a game. But I'm still trying to understand why, you're trying to get the ultimate weapon, right, for a game you've been playing for hundreds of hours, and only to find that you're being pushed to use a different weapon, which you're still going to want to scratch that itch, so to speak, in terms of, hey, look, I want the ultimate version of this weapon, and you're not even going to let me buy it, right, even if I desperately want it. I mean, of course, I'd resist something like that, but it just seems slightly counter intuitive or counterproductive.
I don't know. I think
having to grind for it,
yeah, I think
many additional hours.
It was, if at the period of time I was playing, it was one of the most contentions, was that the end game plus or end game, the drop rate for some of these gems was just ridiculous. And I think it was bragging rights, to be honest with you. It's bragging rights, because once you got it, you knew you was probably of the very few people who got that weapon.
There was no achievement attached to it.
No, not at all. I think the achievement was just owning it at its top tier. Its top tier, because it was, once the weapon itself had got to the point where it had been completely powerful, it would do horrendous damage to a large number of the monsters. So it could easily one shot and two shot some of the lesser beasts, and definitely to the bigger beasts it would do some horrendous damage, which would probably, I wouldn't say make the game easier, but definitely would make it a much easier ride, sort of thing. But it's just one of the things. It was a bone of contention of the game at the time, and that was just for me. It was just like, what, as much as I liked the game, and I had put in some serious hours, I was just like, it's almost going through the whole game again just to get this one potential drop of a gem. that was just too much for me. It was at least a bit too much for me, and so I kind of put it to bed. And I know it gave me for that alone. It gave me its money's worth. Trust me, I had a hell of a lot of time enjoying it, and I would recommend anyone playing it. It will give you its money's worth, that's for sure. It's just hopefully now they may have sorted out the drop rate. And it has got DLC as well, so you can actually play around with the DLC. But
See,
yeah, I mean,
see that Stubbs removables politely encouraging you almost to move past the tutorial of Monster Hunter World and get involved with the format.
Yeah, I will say it's definitely a game to play with friends. This I had so much fun playing with randoms, and I'm not a multiplayer. I used to be a multiplayer freak. I loved multiplayer, and I've kind of, as I've got older, I've moved away from playing with multiplayer. But that was definitely one of the games that kind of got me back into multiplayer again with just random people. It was such a fun to play with 3 other people trying to take down this monster. It was a very enjoyable way to spend an evening. It definitely they did it right. Put it this way, that's what I'll say.
He's saying basically we're not very good company.
I think we. No, I say trust me. I reckon if we were all 3 in a team, it would still be a great experience. I think it would be a perfect experience for anybody to play. Bit like when we've had matches with Gears, Stubbs.
Actually, yes, yeah. Actually, that's a good segue. So it's not something I like to go on about, but it is rumored that it may be made up. An acclaimed Xbox IP is going multi-platform. The problem
is that CFEs?
No. Well, yeah, but the problem is, right, 1 minute it's Hi-Fi Rush, next minute they're saying it's it could be it's Sea of Thieves, but it could also be made up. But the problem is, what's happening is the Crybabies online, as you've all probably, well, you don't really use Twitter, do you, VJ, much? No. Is how
it's to read the boost you've been sending me.
Well, Xbox has got this reputation now of always answering people's calls when they get called on. Is this true? Well, people are crying, on Twitter, Phil, etc. And he's not answering people's calls. He's just ignoring it. Xbox is ignoring it. It's all over the fact that Xbox might be porting a game to another platform. Whoopie-doo.
What's wrong with that?
It's good for everyone in general.
I mean, I don't know if I'm getting the wrong end of the stick here, but I think I've been a proponent of this on this show especially when I first started on Boom shows, when this sort of stuff started coming up, because I've never even heard of this kind of dilemma. But I still maintain I don't see why Sony and Microsoft, because they always look at the big picture, right? Consumers are always about the moment, right? Their lives, their emotions, their thoughts, their desires, everything is contributing to the moment, right? Because that's how they live.
I played this first on PlayStation for a year, and Xbox didn't have it. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, you're right there, Rune, because Sony, and so are you, Mr. Stubbs, because I can see the resignation in your voice as you can't see why this is an issue, and that's why you're far more intelligent than people give you credit for, is because Sony and Microsoft and even Nintendo can, to a degree, Nintendo don't need to, because their first party games sell 20-30 million copies, on a single format, but they can see the bigger picture. And cost of gaming development and the risk is, how hard it is to make a video game, right? You don't, because I would say all those people that say Microsoft should do this, Sony should do this, Nintendo should do that, I think that, why don't you go away and just forget about making a game, just come up with a treatment for a video game.
Well, it's money on the table, and money on the table is not going to be left, is it?
I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for developers in my time, and I've seen games go through to some of those games go through to publication and sell millions of units. I can tell you to even come up with a concept of a game is difficult, and then you have to add the technical aspect of producing that game. It's really, really difficult, let alone pre-production. So what I'm saying is that and I said this before, there'll come a point of convergence when Microsoft is, may not be in the hardware business, but that doesn't mean they won't be in the subscription business. That doesn't mean that they won't produce hardware for people, that dedicated fans that want to buy the hardware. But even for Sony, and I think I said it on the show, is that I don't see why, the first God of War doesn't come out on Xbox. Just put it on there at full price, because if you sell a million units on Xbox and you gain $70 million, that pays for almost a third of the development cost for a game like that, and cost of God of War 4, 5, or Gears 6 or 7. I'm
very much behind Gears going multi-platform, and you'll find a lot of the actual Gears players, the ones that ain't tied into the fanboy wars, are very much behind Gears of War going multi-plat, because quite frankly, I mean, I know they're still making the next Gears, or apparently they are. There isn't, the Gears numbers have dropped. It's not as big as Halo, obviously, but it's due to the fact that Xbox doesn't put enough weight behind the Gears of War IP. So I'm very much behind them going multi-platform. As Luke did joke there about Gears going to Nintendo Switch 2. But yeah, there was one rumour, he's right, one rumour about Hi-Fi Rush going to the Switch, and another rumour about Sea of Thieves going multi-platform. Now, all the live service games make very much sense. So Halo Infinite, the multiplayer, that's live service, and Sea of Thieves is live service. Both of them games should be on all platforms, making as much money as possible, building the player base up. They make perfect sense, they do. I don't see.
You don't believe that franchise or Xbox, or I'd say first party games should be then? Is what you're saying? You don't believe that?
I think that we're going to be living. I'm not saying now. Years to come, I do think they're all going to realise, all the big players, and it's going to be, because the hardware business hasn't grown much in the past 20 years. I've seen the graph. It's not growing massively compared to the mobile gaming, and the mobile market's outpacing it. I do think it would be a case of you buy your Xbox, or you buy your PlayStation, or you buy your Switch, or whatever you want to buy, or it's all in the cloud by that point. Probably got,
or your PC,
or 2 terabyte internet by then, maybe, or whatever. And you'll just pick the games you want, and that would be it. You'll be playing whatever you want. But we will get there one day. Software makes money. Hardware doesn't. Really.
Because I'll try and be the opposition in this particular instance, because I can understand the reasoning of both sides.
Sorry. Welcome, Luke. Still, I'm sure you were here before as well. Just give you a shout out. Goat Force Gaming, welcome, and Sergeant Sentinel Gaming. Thanks for popping in. Right, carry on.
Because we need someone to be the opposition. I'm happy to play devil's advocate. I can understand the logical of why they're saying first party games should remain first party, because you know what's going to happen. They'll say, well, what's the point of buying Xbox if you know in a year's time it's going to be on PlayStation? What's the point? And it'll be the same thing for PlayStation. What's the point of buying a PlayStation if it's going to be on here? So I can see their argument in that respect, and why they are hesitant to allow first party games to be multi-platform. And that is an argument. I'd say it's not the best argument, but it is an argument. So how would you as a group combat that argument? Anyone?
Go on, speak. See you now.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually agree with you. I can't. My stance on the situation is, I think each platform deserves something to attract people to its particular services. Whereas, Nintendo's got the Zelda, the Pokemon, the Mario. Xbox Halo, the Gears, the Forza, PlayStations, the Spider-Man, the God of War, etc. But games like Hi-Fi Rush, for example, I have no idea if it's true or not. Source is kind of reliable, but Nintendo already has. You think about it, they already have Banjo and another Xbox IP mascot and Super Smash Brothers, anyways. And a game like Hi-Fi Rush, kind of fits that platform, to be honest. Whereas, you think of Sea of Thieves, live service games, after a while, the audience gets capped for a particular platform. So, same reason why Call of Duty will stay multi-platform. Why not let Sea of Thieves go elsewhere? As for Gears or Halo or Forza, I don't think particular games like that should be everywhere. I think those should be their own particular platforms. Because, like you mentioned, for example, why not release God of War 1 on Xbox full price, $70, whatever. Well, what if PlayStation wants to entice people to come to their service and they want to put particular God of War in that? That might be a particular way to pull them towards the PlayStation platform.
I agree with you,
compare.
Chris. That I agree. As I said with Nintendo, right? They have staple content, like with Mario, Mario Kart, Mario Baseball, Mario Tennis, Mario Galaxy. You name it, right? Zelda, etc. Donkey Kong. All of their franchises, and they can maintain and sustain, right, their development process, their budgets, and they know that they'll sell 20 to 30 million copies of that game, right? Let alone all the other consumer division licensing content or production or manufacturing or licensing that they do, that they'll retain additional income. And the same way that I'm not saying that Sony and Microsoft shouldn't retain, if they're in the business of selling hardware, if they're in the business specifically of selling hardware, I'd say that yes, you must maintain certain staple or stable IPs to sell hardware, because that's just been the business model and it's been successful for, as Stubbs has said, for the last 30 years, even perhaps before that. I just feel that there is specific content out there and stress on developers whereby certain games are costing hundreds of millions of dollars, and perhaps it is the live service games, and those games perhaps should be afforded to other customer bases. And if you want to, like with Game Pass, for example, you've got, I'm just going to take an example, I'm not saying Starfield, but just as an example, right, for Game Pass, it's day and date in Game Pass, is that right? First day and day one, right? And I was thinking at the time, well, if a year or 2 years or even 3 years down the line, they want to release it on PlayStation at $70 and not in a service, that number one, for Microsoft, is it really any skin off of their nose? Number two, it's a case of, again, stipulating the point, hey, you could have played this game 3 years ago, pretty much in a subscription service without having to lay out, $70 plus tax in Indiana. But and stipulating the fact that you're still going to have to pay $70 to play on PlayStation. And I think that, like with first party releases, there is a people complaining that the price point is $70. There's always going to be a portion of the market that'll pay the $70, and then there's a portion of the market that they'll pay $50, and then perhaps the mass market that'll end up paying $20, $25 for the game. So I'm just trying to find out, is that for specific games that do cost a lot of money, that don't necessarily make their money back, or find it hard to do so, or do so over a 2-3 year period of time after the game's been released, that strategically that it makes sense to put it on another hardware system whereby other consumers get to play it, but it's pure profit at the end, pure net book profit for these guys, right? Bar the conversion costs. But the hardware systems are so familiar, I wouldn't see that as being a problem.
That is true.
That's my take on it, and I don't know if the market will turn that way, but I think at some point there will be a point of convergence. I'm not saying complete convergence, but like we're seeing with MLB being multi-format, because the MLB persisted on the fact, right? Like the fact that Destiny content is still going to be multi-format until anything happens at boardroom level with Sony taking over Bungie and buying a company that basically says, look, we're happy to be bought, but our content remains multi-format. So, and the same with what's the other game that Microsoft bought? Minecraft, was it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Minecraft. Yeah, Minecraft remains multi-format.
Well,
And I just think that there are some smart moves to be made whereby, for older content can be released on other systems, and it'll only be the minority of consumers that will have an issue with it, right? A minority, the communities that will have an issue again will be, the people that will have an issue with it will be in the minority. I mean, if God of War came out on the Xbox, would you stop buying a PlayStation? Would you stop, if you love that game and it's going to be 3 years, are you going to be able to wait to play God of War 2 for another 3 years? Or there's a couple of games mentioned in the chat. Was it Demon Souls and forgot who it is. It picks us up on my that are waiting, that are happy to wait for it to come out on another hardware system, right? That are not jumping forward and buying that hardware to play that specific game. So I think there are some smart moves to be made if publishers and first party are saying, it is a really difficult and tough gamble, right, to invest the levels of money that they have to, right, in let's just call it AAA production.
Well, let's look at the end goal. Let's look at it from what the subscription services will end up becoming. And this will be probably the best way of how we can determine where things are going to end up. If we say that the individual IPs stick with their platform, so Sony's IP sticks with Sony's IP, Xbox sticks with Xbox IP, that works in terms of hardware. It doesn't work in terms of subscription service, because what you're going to end up having is you're going to end up being paying for a subscription service for a limited number of IPs. So what you'll have Xbox. You're effectively what you're having is you're literally be paying a subscription service for a reduced number of IPs, because every other game will be multi-platform, multi for everything for everyone to play. Is that where gamers would like to see themselves? I think that's the question. That's the question we need to ask. Is that where gamers themselves would like to see yourselves? Would you like to see yourself in 20 years' time saying, I'm paying for an Xbox subscription and I'm guaranteed to have 12, 20 IP games. Everything else is multiplat and I can play it everywhere else. Because that's effectively what's going to end up happening.
And that's that goes for outside gaming too.
That's
Let
right.
me ask you a question. How many streaming services do you pay for like a Netflix style based subscription?
Amazon, Netflix. And this is the thing: is that where gamers wish to see themselves? So here's you've picked a really good point there. So, for instance, one of the TV series I watched, I can't think of it. It was it was not Inner Space. It was to do with I can't think it was called. Really bad. Sorry, my brain's going. It was a particular series, and I could actually on Netflix play season 1 to season 3. Season 4 to season 6 was only on Amazon, so I had to switch subscription services to see the entire series, because one owned the rights on one side and one owned the rights on the other side. And that's the potential future of what you may actually happen, depending on how things evolve. And is that something? As gamers, is that something we'd like to see?
I think remember the point that you make there, is that okay? If hardware is not the issue, right? Because I'm coming from the point of hardware sales. If hardware sales are not as compulsory in the future as stubs,
I don't think they are. I think we can see the evolution of that coming.
Then we are back to then the case for putting IP across several different formats, perhaps first on yours, then 3 years later or 2 years later or 1 year later on a competing platform, to pick up any residual revenues,
Mhm.
which you're not going to get unless it's on that specific service, then it does come back to having specific content, which is staple content or staple IPs, which are synonymous with your hardware or your digital, not your digital subscription service, which which are key to pulling in the punters. Then we're back to exclusives. But I still think that there is content there, and it depends on if you have that content. And Microsoft definitely has a wide array of content, right? There's no debate about that now, right? Especially with the Activision purchase, that they can afford to have, and they already do, right? Have content that is available on multiple hardware systems, as well as content which is exclusive to their ecosystem. But I think I go back to what Stubbs said, is that this graph or whatever he alluded to, Mr. Stubbs. Sorry, I don't mean to put words in your mouth. In terms of how much the hardware install
Is
base
evolving.
per generation hasn't incrementally really increased.
No.
It's still around the 200 or 300 million unit mark per across the three hardware formats, not including PC, per generation, right? And sometimes Xbox has a little bit more, sometimes Sony has a bit less, sometimes Nintendo has the margin. So as content, as our desire for more improved content going forward, either we take the fact that content in the future may be more limited in terms of how much gameplay, game time we get, because technology is moving so further forward and they need more people to produce content. I'm not going to get into a discussion about AI here, but it then comes a cost of, okay, right, if what we produce as a cutting edge piece of software, which is what we expect from first party, can we actually make a profit from that? And I think I'd love to know if Starfield turned a profit, because I'd be surprised if it did, right? Given the amount of investment that's gone into it. It's not that Microsoft can't absorb it, but can Sony?
Starfield is Starfield profit comes from longevity. Same as Skyrim, the same as Fallout series. Those are games that are built for decades of play, purchase, expansion, and mods.
Yeah.
To go in and say this has failed in terms of pricing is disingenuous, because that's not the structure it's ever been built on. You can see this with Skyrim. Skyrim is still making money. How long is it? Like 15 years? 20 odd years now? It's probably 15 years now. In terms of its mods, in terms of its upgrades, its remasters, and it's the same thing with the other IPs. Fallout is still being, tweaked, modded, adjusted, played to death. And so those IPs, look at those IPs and say, it's failed, it hasn't made enough money. You're looking at it way too early. Look at it in, say, 5 years' time to see if it's one.
So basically, Starfield is a 5 to 10 year investment that they've made, right?
Without a doubt, yeah. It's a 5 to 10 year investment, possibly a little bit longer. It depends on how it goes when it comes to the IP. As I said, Fallout, the IP, people are still playing all different types of the Fallout games even now. Same with Skyrim, they're still buying it, they're still playing it, they're still modding it. It's still a vibrant community to those, and so people are still basically finding the games. People are still going and saying, "Oh, Skyrim, I've never played that before. Let's play that." That's still happening even now. It's going to be the same thing for Starfield. I think it's a little bit disingenuous at this stage to start looking at whether it's failed or not. It's definitely 5 years down the line.
It depends on how you define failure. For me, I just purely look at it.
When I say failure, I mean in terms of simple monetary aspect here. It's not in terms of in terms of how it is received.
Specifically, has it recouped its development cost as yet? It's not a case of.
I think we're too early to notice this, because it's not built for a year's. It's like some games, your single player, third party players, they're built for that's it. you need to know if they've recouped their losses within a year or two's lifespan. That's not the same thing for Fallout, Starfield.
No, no.
It's a very different package. So if you're looking at that, it's slightly disingenuous
No,
because
I reckon
you can see the previous.
I reckon the board of directors want to know. Guaranteed, Microsoft wants to know.
Well, no, they'll want to see the trend. They'll want to see the trend, but the trouble is,
I think
some of that trend is going to change. That trend. I mean, how many? Okay, perfect example. We just spoke about it today on the show. Monster Hunter World. That has exploded again. Now, I wouldn't say it was dead in the water, but it exploded again, and it's now up to the same numbers of player bases 3 to 4 years further down the line. And that's a very similar sort of game in terms of it was built to last for a short for a couple of years. It had a DLC, but it's still really built to keep going for possibly another 5 to 10 years. I can bet you'll probably still have people playing it 3 or 4 more years down the line. Some of the games are just built in terms of monetary value.
Yeah, I think the difference is that, okay, so look, Starfield was I picked it as an example, right, as a pure game release recouping its money. But in terms of the business model, right, I get the business model is different, as is the business model for games as a service, right, or live service games, unless they're one and the same. But I think Stubbs makes a good point, right, in terms of, I'm not sure if this was a hypothetical question, right, in terms of Hi-Fi Rush and what was the other one someone mentioned, Sea of Thieves. So is this a hypothetical question or just rumors or just?
No, it's based off of two separate rumors.
Well, this is the thing that slightly confused me because they're two different genres. So you have your Hi-Fi Rush single player game.
Yeah.
Single player game that it's probably I don't know. I'm going to be facetious here. It's probably it's the end of its lifespan on Xbox, so it makes monetary sense to kind of put it onto another platform and get some more money out of it.
That's what I said.
On the other hand,
just make smart choices on smart games that can generate some additional revenue for you, and it is not going to break the bank, and it's not going to break the status quo, and it's not going to change your market position, but it can generate significant amounts of revenue for you, and it's worth the effort to do so. I think Sony were a little bit late to the PC market, but the thing is, for them, they're a cautious company. I just think that the same way that Game Pass was mocked in the beginning, as in, how can you do this? How can you put, first party $100 million games in Game Pass day one? Well, when you've got when you've got extreme amount of resources, time, money,
Game
influence,
Pass, it's a bit it's a bit. The way I look at Game Pass, and again, the way I kind of look at Game Pass is like Sea of Thieves. It's not built for a short-term monetary investment. It's built for the long term. So when we say, Game Pass doesn't make a profit, it's like, yeah, but what are you looking at? Are you looking at a 5-year profit? Are you looking at a 10-year profit margin? Are you looking at a 20-year profit margin?
Are you looking
at a 40-year profit margin?
At it in this moment, or are you looking at the bigger picture over the next time?
Exactly. And the trouble is, with a lot of subscription services, people aren't looking. The actual, don't get me wrong, the investors are looking at the trends of subscription services. But when it comes to that as a service, they're probably saying, here's a 50-year idea. And we think we can hit these certain targets as we progress through those years. And it's the same thing with Game Pass. There is probably certain bullet points upon which they expect to hit. And that will help. And it could be at the end of, say, 50 years, they've made 5%. But what they've done is, as you've certainly said, they could be the market leader in that subscription service. That's a much more valuable thing than, say, making 100 billion, because then once you've got that basis, you can then expand upon it and tweak it to suit what you want. So
it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that, Removable, about market leadership, because I can't remember what I was chatting with on one of the channels. It was like, it took Netflix something like 15 or 20 years, right, to accumulate their XYZ.
Yeah.
Let's say it was 100 million, for example, right? And it's true, right? Those that lead provide guidance for those that follow. And it took Amazon a fraction of the time, not to reach the same amount, but to reach 80% of Netflix's user base, right? In like 25% of the time. So obviously Netflix is, I believe, are still market leaders, right? I don't think Hulu or Disney are up there at all.
No, I think they still are. Yeah, they're still market leaders in that regard. But
in terms of Netflix doing all the groundwork and providing almost a slipstream, a commercially incentivized slipstream for Amazon. But yeah, no, I agree with you, right?
So that's how I kind of see Game Pass. So when I do see it talked about as well, it's not profitable, I kind of have to ask them how they know that. What are you saying when it says it's not profitable?
I don't know if people are saying it's not profitable.
Are you looking at the market share? Are you looking at it as a
Yeah. I think people are saying, look, on the books today, what's happening on as of today, and we don't know, that may or may not be in the red or in the black, but obviously, what are their plans over the next 5 to 10 years, right? It's no different to I don't know what game it was, Removal. They were making a trilogy. Was it Mass Effect? It might have been where they said,
Yes.
look, the first one's not going to make a profit, but the second and the third are all based off the same tech, blah 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 blah. And it's 3 gens. The first game's taken us 4 years, and the second and third will take us 2 years, and the next whatever, or we'll make them back to back. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's that thing. So I think we get so caught up at the here and now.
Yep.
Yes, you're right. At the moment, that's exactly it. We get so caught up at the moment, we forget about the future and the future potential. And so,
why, Removal, right? Because people live and derive. Well, they want to derive emotion, and they can only derive emotion in the moment, right? They can't get that emotion or their thoughts and get behind a bigger picture. It's very, very difficult psychologically for people to do that.
We're all faulty of that. I mean, can I get excited for a CGI trailer for next year? No, I can't. I might, depending on the franchise, I might be able to, but no, I generally can't.
Tactics, you would.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do now, because it's been a great topic, but I think we've got to round it up there, because we could go on for the next 2 hours, I reckon. Because it's been a great topic, it has.
I will keep chatting.
And my son's sat there waiting for me if he's awake for some reason.
He's waiting for toast.
But he might be. Thanks, C-Unit, for coming on. It's been a good show, and you've had some good valid inputs into the show. It's been fun having you on, and I'm sure we'll get you back on in the future. Again. Definitely.
I definitely appreciate you having me on. It's always a blast.
We want a full review of Baldur's Gate 3 when you're next on.
We actually have a review for Baldur's Gate 3 on the website.
But is it yours? Your specific?
It is not my review.
Oh, no.
I think it's fair. It's a good review. Well, what you could do is you can do a guide, can't you?
I could.
Yeah. See.
Yeah, so
we're giving Chris more work.
Yeah,
giving them a purpose.
Yeah, he's got enough of it, isn't it? I'm sure that the old Lords of Gaming are keeping Chris very much busy.
I'll give you a full in-depth analysis next time I talk to you.
Chris, I think you're probably going to get an email in your inbox from the Lords, right, and mandating you never to appear on this show again.
Probably, yeah. But no, thanks for coming on. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, for people that want to find you?
Of course. CUnit123 on Twitter. Everywhere else, like Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, LinkedIn, CUnit Chris Jones. I'm everywhere. Trying to network out there and grow the brand, so to speak. So you can find me anywhere. I'm open anytime anybody wants to talk. Just shoot me a DM.
Thanks.
Always good. And
thanks.
You're on X as well, aren't you? Is that correct? Is that the best place to kind of get hold of you if you want a direct chat?
Oh yeah, I still call it Twitter, but yeah, you can find me on X. CUnit123.
Twix.
Oh yeah, I guess I better say, don't forget to catch all my content. lordsofgaming.net. There's also an upcoming. It's not really out yet, but the lordsofgaming.net team are putting together a Lords of Gaming YouTube to where all of our
nice.
developer interviews and future interviews of that kind will go. So definitely stay tuned.
Keep an eye out for it. Yes, indeed.
Thanks for coming on, Chris. It's been good. It has.
Thanks, Stubbs.
And Rune Sanity, thanks for coming on once again.
Apologies for
Renegade
chatting.
Master.
It's one of my very many flaws is that I will continue to chat when beyond the reasonable amount of time allotted. So I apologise for Chris on that. That's probably put him off for life ever coming back on this podcast. But it is nice to have him on here, and we do need to see him and get a bit more. So also shout out to Lords of Gaming. They are doing a fantastic job out there. If you aren't following them, please do follow them. But for myself, if you're interested in listening to me yabber or talk absolute nuts about things, you can find me on YouTube, Minds, Twitter, and Xbox under the same Removal Sanity.
Thanks for coming on. And VJ, thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me on, Mr. Stubbs. And if you want to find me, I'll be on Mr. Stubbs's lawn impersonating a garden gnome.
If you want to find me, I'll be on this YouTube channel, so press subscribe. Or on the podcast feeds, press follow. And we will see you all next Monday. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.